The superpowers of the First World propagate that their past eras of colonial imperialism. During the transitional post-World War II period, there emerged an alternative called development, where instead of settling on foreign territories and colonizing their peoples, these superpowers sought to invest into these underdeveloped regions, to welcome them as sovereign participants in global free trade, thus facilitating growth and prosperity for every nation. It sounds as righteous as can be and as rhetorically strategic as former President Truman's 1949 inaugural address, in which he calls for an anti-communist economic development for the sake of security, abundance, and democratic fair dealing. But is modern development really an equitable alternative to settler colonialism? Is this the economic revolution that the world deserves? I'll attempt to answer this question by cross-examining Maria Josefina Saldaña Portillo's chapter, Development and Revolution, Narratives of Liberation and Regimes of Subjectivity in the Post-War Period, and Octavia E. Butler's collection, Bloodchild and Other Stories, focusing on a short story called Amnesty as an illustration of post-war development. Saldaña Portillo's chapter on 20th century development is a segment of her larger work, The Revolutionary Imagination of the Americas and the Age of Development. She walks us through the meaning of development as a model for capitalistic progress and a modern shift away from settler colonialism toward economic colonialism. The idea came about in the aftermath of World War II, as the world's superpowers were planning on the reconstruction of Europe. And during the 1944 Bretton Woods Conference, two key development programs were instituted, namely the International Monetary Fund, or the IMF, and the International Bank for Reconstruction and Development, later known as the World Bank. These would provide loans to poor countries to develop their economies, beginning with an impoverished post-war Europe. And Saldaña notes that a U.S. Treasury Department document explaining the International Bank for Reconstruction and Development states simply, quote, "The underdeveloped countries offer immense stores of raw materials that the more advanced countries, including the United States, need to supplement their own exhaustible resources. They also offer the prospect of a substantial market for manufactured goods. Their first need, however, is for machinery, tools, and heavy equipment, all of which will have to be imported and largely paid for with borrowed funds." End quote. This perfectly summarizes the concept of development. It's a method to control capitalistic production crises and secure United States economic hegemony by funding the extraction of resources from third world countries and thus keeping these countries dependent and indebted to U.S. aid. The changed rhetoric around development has in part allowed for its longevity in the global foreign policy. Saldaña observes that, quote, "Development replaced the civilizing mission of the age of colonialism with imperatives of self-determination, independence, free trade, industrialization, and economic growth in the post-colonial era." End quote. Development maintains colonialism's racialized subordination through the First World's burden to save the underdeveloped Third World from their poverty, and it seeks to expand a U.S. monopoly on foreign natural resource industries. Octavia Butler's short story Amnesty serves as a personified illustration of development as an alternative to colonialism, as is Saldaña's thesis. In the story, an alien species whose members are known as communities have permanently settled on various bubbles across Earth. The aliens are not explicitly colonial. Though they've settled on Earth, they allow the other territories outside of their bubbles to maintain their sovereignty, and the communities are not engaged in the traditional colonization of humans, yet they are dependent on humans to learn about the way that the Earth works, as evidenced by a period of experimentation on kidnapped humans. Humans are a resource to extract knowledge about their newfound world. Likewise, in our world, developed nations have moved away from outright colonization, but still need a way to tap into the unextracted resources of the underdeveloped Third World. In this way, free trade becomes the most profitable option because it makes room for more players and markets for the United States to dominate economically. Development has a rhetoric that claims to be in the best interest of the underdeveloped countries who are to receive technological and financial aid. The Third World doesn't have the money or tools to extract the abundant resources within their territories themselves and needs loans in order to begin decolonizing themselves through economic freedom. Similarly, in Amnesty, the communities offer jobs, housing, food, and security to humans who come voluntarily to work for them. In their current times of economic depression, no matter how much humans resent the alien superpower, they become dependent on them for resources. Interestingly, the evil of the aliens doesn't parallel the evil of the human dominion before it. The aliens at least rejected the use of nuclear warfare and eventually engaged with humans diplomatically. On the other hand, human institutions like the CIA in the story, were terribly abusive toward their own subjects. So though the alien communities were not as merciless as humans in their dealings, they still settled on Earth and flipped the global economy upside down. And this illustrates Saldanha's argument that development is still a better alternative to the evils of settler colonialism because it looked toward sovereignty, but ultimately it is still an extension of the former system. It is neocolonialism.